Welcome. This is Outnumbered. I'm Melissa Francis. Here today is Fox Business Network's Dagen McDowell, Democratic strategist Julie Roginsky, reporter for National Review Online Katherine Timpf, and today's #OneLuckyGuy co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend, Tucker Carlson, and he is wildly outnumbered.
Wildly
but
comfortable being outnumbered.
You got a new toupee. It looks
Whoa!
just for us. That's so nice.
Why, thank you for
You
noticing,
have
Dagen.
awesome hair. Come on.
But you're right to note it's not actually mine.
Oh
Now
my
I've got you. That's a debate strategy. Now I've got you back on your heels.
Maybe he's wearing that cone of uncertainty that Janice Dean was talking
I think
about
his hair is
there.
a cone of uncertainty for everybody.
All right, well, that was fun. We go to the race for the White House now in the bitter Twitter war erupting between Donald Trump and Mexico's president over who's going to pay for the border wall following the GOP nominee's visit to Mexico and his fiery speech on immigration. Trump tweeting emphatically, quote, "Mexico will pay for the wall," to which Mexico's leader replied, quote, "I repeat what I said personally, Mr. Trump. Mexico would never pay for a wall." All this is some major Latino surrogates for Trump stepping down, and the Trump campaign setting a record one-day haul in donations following his Wednesday night speech. In the meantime, the candidate himself on the O'Reilly factor signaling his top goals on tackling illegal immigration and appearing to acknowledge the realities of such a massive undertaking. Listen.
We're going to build the wall. We're going to get rid of all of the bad players that are here, the gang members, the gang leaders, the drug dealers, all of the cartel people. After that takes place, we're going to sit back. We're going to assess the situation. We're going to see where we are, because we'll have people in the country that, that have come in illegally. We're going to sit back. We're going to assess the situation.
Ooh, a lot to drill down on there. Tucker, my friend, let me start with you. The Twitter war between the presidents, is it unbecoming after
yes,
such
it's
it's classic Trump. It's kind of.
It is classic Trump. Here's the difference, though. I mean, first of all, I think Twitter diminishes anyone who participates in it. Just my view. And it certainly diminishes people of the stature of Trump and the president of Mexico. There's no reason. There are many ways they can express their views, right? So there's no reason for them to do this. But in this specific case, it's a disaster because his speech was so successful and because he made point after point that was basically irrefutable. They were all correct, they're consistent with American history, with American values. And this kind of behavior, focusing on that one point, who's going to pay for the wall, essentially an immaterial, irrelevant point, allows his detractors to also focus on that point and to ignore the many important things that he said. That speech was the best moment, I thought, of his entire candidacy.
Yeah.
And so why take from it by fighting on Twitter?
Well, this is what Julie has actually been talking about. Rather than keeping his eyes on the road, he's got his right side tires off on the shoulder, and he's going to get a flat. He's not paying attention to what he's doing.
Yes.
And I look at all the issues that he should be focusing on. Can we talk about the economy? It is the #1 issue for American voters, according to the latest Fox News poll. We have weaker than expected job growth. The wage growth is slowing. The economy is barely growing. Worst recovery since 1949. And he is in a dead heat with Hillary Clinton on the issue in the latest poll.
But he addressed those issues in his speech.
He's not hitting it. He has lost double-digit percentages in terms of how he rates on the economy.
Let me argue the other side for a second, then you tell me where I went wrong. It is a bit like he's having his cake and eating it too. He gives the speech. Some people are happy with that. He goes on Twitter. Other people like that. He comes out and says that, in one hand, he's going to deport 5 to 11 million people. Then Reince Priebus comes on earlier on our network saying that's not what he said. He said that after he deports the criminals, then he's going to take a step back and see where we are. He's kind of saying everything to everyone at this point. So maybe everyone's happy with what they're hearing.
Well, I think actually nobody's happy. Everybody's very confused. You need a consistent message. I mean, if you're running for president, if you're running for dog catcher, whatever you're running for, you need to have a consistent message. And his message is so muddled. The fact that he's getting into a Twitter war with a head of state is, to me, just unbelievable. And again, Dagen for president, because Dagen just laid out what he should be laying out. She just laid out the entire Republican Party platform as it should be repeated over Twitter, as it should be repeated over social media, and that's not what he's doing.
It is confusing because people are just so quick to say, oh, look, here's the pivot. Like when he went to Mexico, he was very calm, very kind, I loved it. It was great. And then that night, the speech in Arizona, very different dude that we're watching. And I'm sure a speech like that fires up the base, but the base is already fired up. He needs to expand that a little bit. And I think the tone interferes with him being able to do that sometimes, because some of the things he's saying, not that radical, like saying that if you're here illegally, you go to jail, you shouldn't be able to come out and shoot someone's kid. I think everybody would agree with that. But that sometimes gets distracted by the way that he talks about things. And this mass deportation thing, I don't think anybody really wants that. Liberals obviously don't want it. Conservatives shouldn't want it, seeing as the kind of police state that would have to create. I think he really needs to back away from that.
Tucker, you made a great point, which I can't believe more people aren't making. Who pays for the wall is so ridiculous. It's semantics. I mean, you could do it with tariffs. You could hold back aid. There's a million different ways it could be done, one way or the other.
Over $100 billion a year in savings just from controlling the uncontrolled flow of people into this country illegally. So there's just that. But he made a very strong economic case. And you may be right, Kat, that his tone obscures it and people can't hear what he's saying. Read the speech. He makes the case. Hillary Clinton says she's running on wages. Really? One of the great depressors of wages is a surfeit of labor. If you've got too many people at the bottom end of the labor pool, wages go down. It's supply and demand. It's the most basic of all economic principles. That's a powerful economic case.
If you're speaking to the vast majority of voters out there about the economy and their own personal financial situation, you have to broaden it out beyond immigration when you're talking about it. He needs to look at her and say she's promising more of what President Obama has given us in 7.5 years, but better results. And that is idiocy. That's all he has to say. I'm proposing something different. She is not. And he misses the boat on it.
But here's the problem. First of all, you have a Fox News poll that just came out. 19% want the deportation that he's talking about. 77% want a path to legalization.
But he's not talking about that. He's not talking about deporting everybody.
Well, now he's not. Before he was. I'm confused. Where is he? Is he now backing away from his pledge of the last year to not mass deport?
Clearly on the take a pause after we send the criminals out of the country.
I don't know. Well, I don't know what that means. Does that mean they're going to continue to live in the shadows, work illegally, and there's no path to legalization, which is the status quo right now? What is he proposing? And secondly, you know, when we talk about this border wall, this is a question I really wish somebody could answer for me, or at least ask Donald Trump. The Rio Grande, the river, is a huge divider of the border between Mexico and the United States. Where are we building this wall? In the middle of the Rio Grande?
We're putting sharks and gators in there.
Seriously, is it going to be like lasers with sharks like Austin Powers? Is it going to be on the Mexican side of the border? No, but literally, is it going to be on the Mexican side of the border?
Can that possibly be the problem with this? I mean, really?
It's a legitimate. It's not. It's a legitimate question.
We begin with the philosophical question, which does the country have a right to have secure borders?
Where are you going to put the border?
Look, the Rio Grande is dry. I hunt down there a lot. It's dry in a lot of places.
So you're going to put it in the middle of the Rio Grande?
It doesn't matter. These are logistical questions that are immaterial.
They're very material.
Engineers are these meaningful questions.
No, Tucker, they're not, because if you're talking about putting it in the middle of a river, that's one thing. If you're talking about putting it on the Mexican side of the border,
look, the left opposes the wall because they don't want to control the flow of people into the country because they vote Democrat. Like, let's be honest.
I would love to hear the answer to that question. It's not a technical question. It's a sovereignty question.
In that speech, he firmed up some waffling that had been coming out of his campaign about immigration, and then gets into some Twitter battle with the head of state. That's where he goes wrong. That's where
that's what people on MTV do, not people who are running for president of the United States.
And then today he gets into a crazy psychoanalysis of Mika Brzezinski over at MSNBC when he should be talking about what Dagen was just saying.
But that's on the merits, he might not be that far.
Right.
I mean, on the merits, if you're running to be head of state.
And I take great pride that I don't even know how to pronounce that woman's name.
Well, I know her father. It's Zbigniew Brzezinski.
All right. The State Department now going to release all of Hillary Clinton's schedules from her time as Secretary of State before Election Day. And now even more evidence of the blurry lines between the State Department and the Clinton Foundation, whether all of this is going to hurt her campaign for the White House. Plus, he was a star Stanford swimmer before he was convicted of raping an unconscious woman. Today, Brock Turner getting out of jail, having served only half of the 6-month sentence that sparked so much outrage.
More and more trouble brewing for Hillary Clinton. Hard to know where to start. Well, the State Department is now saying it will release all of the Democratic nominees' schedules from her days at state before Election Day. That's ahead of the original timeline. Meantime, in response to a lawsuit from Tucker Carlson's own Daily Caller, a federal judge is ordering the State Department to release security training records for Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin within 2 weeks or face depositions. Fox News has confirmed that Hillary Clinton skipped a cybersecurity briefing back in 2011.
That explains it.
Yeah. All this as newly released emails show a foundation executive requesting help from the State Department Department to get diplomatic passports. They were never issued, but the Clinton camp says that the request was related to a Bill Clinton emergency trip to North Korea to negotiate the release of 2 Americans. Judicial Watch says that the rules would only have allowed such a passport for President Clinton, not the staffers also on the request. And now, Vice President Joe Biden dodging questions about the foundation.
Do you think Americans should be concerned at all about the ethics of the Clinton Foundation? Has the Clinton Foundation always been 100% ethical in your view?
Look, I think the Clinton Foundation, like all foundations, has found themselves in a position where things are changing, and I think she's going to change and adjust to the realities of how complicated it's all become.
And is she clearing herself up enough for that? Should the foundation have to stop taking foreign donations now?
Well, I think you'll see them stop taking foreign donations.
Tucker, it's a slow bleed. It's a little bit day by day, but will this be fatal to her candidacy?
Well, you take 3 steps back. You don't have to work for the federal government. You don't have to have a position of authority over the rest of us. But once you accept that job, your work product needs to be available to us. We pay for it. It's not your property. It's the property of American taxpayers. That's the fact of working in the executive branch of government. And so the fact that we had to file a suit, that a bunch of different news organizations have had to file lawsuits and go through at great expense this effort to get records that belong to us is an outrage. And it reveals what we already know, which is a lot of the people in positions of power in the government, in this administration and others, don't really believe in democracy. They don't actually think you have a right to know what they're doing. And that is an outrage. And we should be mad about it.
Because they abuse the power. I mean, I know that you've looked into these, passports.
The diplomatic passport thing. Okay, so you can only have a diplomatic passport if you are an employee of the government and you're going on official business. So you're supposed to, as an employee of the State Department, show up with your travel plans and your tickets and say, this is where I'm going, this is what I'm going to do. I need a diplomatic passport. Instead, if you're part of the Clinton Foundation and you're Doug Band, you can send an email to Huma Abedin instead and say, hey, guess what? We need a bunch of these.
Okay.
May have been for a good cause, which is what their argument is, but we need a bunch of these. And she goes, okay, let me see what I can do. Let me tell you what's wrong with that. She's supposed to be working at the State Department. She is doing favors for the Clinton Foundation. She is being paid also by the Clinton Foundation. She is being paid also by Teneo, which is a consulting group where they hire friends of the Clintons to do whatever they need, like Chief of Police here in New York, who just left office and is now working for Teneo, and then coincidentally is going out and saying really nice things about Hillary Clinton and how she would be great to be the chief law enforcement officer. Well, he happens to be paid behind the scenes. Bill Bratton, he's a great guy, but this is what he's doing by Teneo, this giant.
Listen, the polls are tightening, and she is still considered more untrustworthy than Donald Trump, even in the Fox News polls, Julie. This is hurting her.
Well, first of all, let's go back to the Teneo Doug Band instance. Had he gotten those diplomatic passports, you would have had a huge story.
You know what they did
right
instead?
now?
They went without having anything stamped. They decided the way around it was to travel to North Korea and have no passport stamped
but let's go back to the North Korea thing. By the way, in terms of releasing her schedules, I agree she should have released them. In terms of the things that they did with the Clinton Foundation, I agree. They should have never taken those foreign donations when she became Secretary of State. On this particular issue, and you don't often hear me defend Teneo and Doug Band, but on this particular issue, you have a former president in the United States in his capacity as a private citizen going to North Korea to negotiate for the release of 2 hostages with whom he was able to come home. He's not traveling alone. He's traveling with Doug Band and 1 or 2 other aides. All of them.
They're comfortable asking their person
asking
in the State Department who they're paying for a favor. That's the point.
To go to North.
It doesn't matter what they're asking for. They're asking for an illegal favor from someone inside the State Department that they're paying.
What Doug Band asked for is Doug Band's problem. What Huma Abedin did is Huma Abedin in the State Department's problem, and she did nothing wrong. The difference is he could ask, I could ask you for the moon right now. It doesn't mean that you're going to give it to me. She never did any favors.
You're not paying me. You're not paying me.
Even if I were paying you.
I just don't know that any of this really matters. Because I know they're tightening. The polls are tightening nationally, but in the key states, Donald Trump really still has a long way to go. I can't imagine, based on everything we already know, what would have to be in these emails, in these schedules, to have people actually care. Like, I don't know, she missed the security briefing because she was throwing a bag of puppies into a river. Like, would that be enough? I don't even know. People are, it's this slow drip of it is making people say, oh, emails, I think I already heard about that, or oh, so more of the same thing, and she laughs it all off. It's sickening that people don't care more, but I really don't think they do.
When will the American people, though, find abuse of power repugnant enough to say, I don't want that person running the country?
It's not going to get better when she has all of the power of controlling the free world. It's going to get worse. People should be thinking about that, but rather than actually looking into these things you're talking about, it's complicated. You have to learn things. How much easier to just say, oh, I heard that Donald Trump's a sexist. I don't like that. I'm not going to vote for him. And sadly, I think that's what a lot more people are doing.
You know when they'll start caring? When Donald Trump actually starts putting forth a message that they can relate to, as opposed to getting to stupid Twitter wars and trashing the media and other people that real people don't care about. That's when it'll get better.
Final word. Donald Trump, speaking of him, getting set to visit Detroit tomorrow for a major address at an African-American church. What can he say to persuade this skeptical voting bloc? Plus, outrage growing as former Stanford swimming star Brock Turner leaves jail today after serving just half of his 6-month sentence for rape. The school's response and what it means for changing the culture on college campuses.
Donald Trump gearing up for a major appearance in Detroit, where he will deliver remarks at an African-American church tomorrow as part of his outreach to minority voters. The trip comes in response to sharp criticism from many in that community, incensed by the Republican nominee's generalization about black life in America. Still, Trump remains confident about his chances.
First of all, I have so many African-American friends where they're doing great, and they're making good money, they're living a good life, they've got the American dream going. But you have tremendous numbers of African Americans that have really had a hard time, I mean, beyond belief. And I read the numbers where you have so many in poverty, and the crime is horrible, and the education is terrible, and they live terribly. And I say, what do you have to lose? I say to them, what do you have to lose? Give it to me. I'm going to fix it. And a lot of people are agreeing with me. What do you have to lose? The Democrats and the Hillary Clintons of the world have done a terrible job. She's been there for 35 years. She's done a terrible job.
Following his remarks, Trump is scheduled to tour some of Detroit's hardest-hit neighborhoods, giving him the opportunity, his campaign says, to take his vision and his message directly to the people. Katherine, let me start with you. I mean, it's an interesting message. He's saying, what's been happening here is not working.
Right. I mean, Hillary's gotten, 91% of the black vote there. So it's like kind of going up a hill with a pogo stick. Very difficult. But if you look at history, he's right. If you look at Bill Clinton's administration, policies that she supported led to uneducated, no college, not college educated black men, the highest unemployment rates among them ever because of incarceration rates. And these are things she's on record supporting. So if you look at the records, yeah, her ideas, the Clintons' ideas, what she supported, left these communities devastated. And so if he can stick to that message, I don't know if he can completely win over these areas, but he can at least make an improvement. And I think it does look great that he's trying. Republicans normally don't even try in these areas.
Tucker, who is he talking to when he says this message? I mean, is he really talking to people in that community and thinking that he's going to get part of the black vote? Or is he talking to maybe more liberal women?
I don't know. And I don't know that it matters. I think true things are worth saying for their own sake. Look, he delivered this message to a white audience last week and was called a racist by Hillary Clinton for doing it. He's delivering it to a black audience tomorrow. I'm sure she'll still call him a racist. But who cares? It doesn't make the message any less true. And the basic message is our urban policy for 50 years has been a demonstrable failure. It really has been. It doesn't mean his ideas are going to fix it. I'm not sure they are. But we do know what we're currently doing does not work. And the Democratic Party is the only beneficiary because they get the votes out of it. By the way, I would just say one last thing. Trump is now polling better among black voters than Mitt Romney did. which to me is gratifying just because it shows how truly dumb the political consultant class in Washington is, who told us that somehow Trump is going to do worse among black voters. He's not going to do great, I wouldn't imagine. Still doing better than Romney, though.
Well, Romney got 59% of the white vote, and he did so poorly among minorities. He still lost. So that's a, you know, an illustration for what Donald Trump is facing. But I thought it was interesting. The New York Times was reporting that the questions that Bishop Jackson was going to ask him were the campaign wanted
making that point this morning.
The campaign wanted to see them, and they got them. I think it was roughly a dozen, and there were some answers, rough kind of sketches that the campaign had put together for him, and like how to respond to the question of whether the campaign is racist, to avoid repeating that word. I just thought it showed great care in how he is addressing this community, and it certainly focus on how his communication skills and his, again, choice of words, Julie.
Let's be clear. He's not speaking to a black audience. He's going into a back room with a pastor. He has gotten the questions pre-submitted to him. He is
Which Hillary Clinton has done in the
past. Listen, let me finish my point. Let me finish my point. He has designed the answer. He has no problem going to a town in Wisconsin that is vastly white and discussing the plight of the black community in front of a huge white audience, but he has no ability to do that in front of a black audience, to look them in the face and repeat the same points.
What's wrong with speaking to a white audience?
Nothing's wrong with speaking to a white audience.
Why did you note it twice?
I noted it twice because he was talking to a white audience about the issues that plagued the black community.
What's wrong with that?
Why doesn't he do that to the black community?
Well, I guess
No, he's not actually, Tucker. He's actually not doing it.
He's going to wait. I want to be clear. Wait, I want to be clear.
No, it's not television. I'm sorry. It's behind closed doors. No press allowed.
No, it's being broadcast after the fact.
After the fact, after it's being edited. They had editing rights.
You know what Trump thinks. He can't tell you on Twitter. I mean, he's not hiding what he thinks.
No, it's a huge difference. He has editing power over this tape. You know what this is? This is a campaign commercial.
There are questions, and then he will also make remarks after the fact, and it will be seen.
Yeah. Donald Trump has given more press conferences in Mexico this year than Hillary Clinton has at all. So to criticize him on the way he's taking questions,
guys,
kind of
ridiculous. If this were Hillary, you'd be all over her. This is such hypocrisy, all over her. He does not have the courage. He does not have the courage.
I mean, isn't it smart though? Because he's gone out in so many different settings and said things, and then it's backfired. I mean, thank God somebody's editing it.
If you're going to talk about the plight of the black community, do it to their face.
But wait a second. I mean, let's just be totally fair for 1 second. Trump's problem is not that he doesn't talk enough or tell you enough about what he thinks. His problem is the opposite. So, like, a lot of things you can say about Trump that are negative, and I agree. I wouldn't, contest them. But you can't say he's hiding what he thinks.
That's the final word. We have to move on. And by the way, the Clinton campaign has, in the past, asked for questions in advance. So it's not hypocritical on that. Let's move on to this story. The former Stanford University swimmer convicted of sexually assaulting an unconscious woman is out of jail. Brock Turner released this morning after spending only 3 months behind bars. That's half his 6-month sentence. The case drawing national attention after the victim's impact statement went viral. If you haven't read it, do. Many saying his sentence was too lenient in the first place. It led lawmakers to pass a tougher sexual assault law, and that's now on the governor's desk. The county sheriff saying that she hopes that he does sign it. She was asked this morning what went through her mind when she first heard what Turner's sentence was.
Outrage. It was a rape conviction. It was a rape conviction of a woman who was unconscious and drunk and should not have done time in our jail. We're done with him. He's gone. He should be in prison right now. He should have been in state prison. It should be a state prison sentence. It's a felony. It's a rape. 6 months where you only do 3 is not correct. It's not right.
Judge Aaron Persky sentenced Turner in June, citing extraordinary circumstances of his youth and clean criminal record. Since then, there's been a push to recall the judge. Meantime, Stanford University announcing a new alcohol policy banning hard liquor from most on-campus parties starting this fall. Despite the timing, the school says it has nothing to do with the Brock Turner case. Critics say that changing a school's drinking policies does not address the problem of rape culture on college campuses. Kat, to you first on this. Where do you start? Because, again, this is concern for the rapist rather than the victim. And rather than addressing rape and people raping unconscious, intoxicated women, the school's going to try and make it about alcohol consumption.
Yeah, right. Where you start is right. You look at the way that this kid talked about this, saying, well, this is so, what about my swimming? What about me? This wasn't because he was drunk. This is because this is a bad guy. I don't care how good he was at swimming or how good his grades are. He's clearly an entitled person who doesn't care about people other than himself. Now, the alcohol policy thing, that's actually going to make things worse. There's no studies that they said are going to make it better. We're going to have kids ripping shots in their dorm rooms to make sure they're drunk enough to go out to this party because they know that they can't drink freely there. It happens all the time. We weren't supposed to drink in my dorm rooms at all in college. Did people? Yes, everybody did.
Yeah,
and a lot of people would get really, really drunk.
Yeah, to be crass, it's not, hey, bourbon causes rape, but wine somehow doesn't.
Exactly.
That's the disgusting display based on this policy.
It's to look like you're doing something that's not controversial, that you don't have to actually say, oh, hey, let's try to change the culture, or hey, this was a horrible thing this kid did. Should not have happened. They're going to say, we're doing something by banning liquor from parties. People are going to be the drunkest they've ever been at these parties
so what are they
at Stanford.
Supposed to do?
Absolutely.
How do you change a culture? And what is rape culture? I mean, look, I think colleges are way less impressive than they pretend to be. I'm not defending Stanford. I wouldn't send my kids there. But partying too much on campuses is a real thing. I've got 2 kids in college. Yeah. It's a real thing. And people who are intoxicated do things they wouldn't ordinarily do. So to pretend that it's not a problem, that kids are wasted all the time in college, is not true. It's a huge problem. And, like, why would we pretend otherwise?
Why are we making alcohol, you know, and this is what I'm about to say, I think is fairly controversial, but when you stigmatize alcohol and you say that when you're 18, you're old enough to go to war and you're old enough to get married or whatever else you're doing, but you're not old enough to buy a bottle of scotch.
That's a fair point.
What that does is lead these kids to start doing exactly what Kat said. It becomes a stigma. You start doing shots in your room. You start doing it quietly. You start doing it in ways that you're not going to want anybody to see. What Stanford is doing is further stigmatizing it, and Kat is absolutely right.
That's not true.
The law of unintended consequences.
I just think it just smacks of it all boils down to personal responsibility in terms of drinking and in terms of not committing rapes and sexual assaults on other individuals, because when this Brock Turner was sentenced, the judge cited the fact that alcohol was involved in the incident because it impaired his judgment. Again, that's not making him take personal responsibility.
We're trying to blame everybody involved here except for the guy who actually did it. Because when you say a rape culture, that puts it back on the university. I mean, this man was a violent predator. When you read this report,
that's why I said read it.
Shocking. I mean, it's shocking what he did. And it's not about a rape culture, and it's not about alcohol. I mean, those are all things that are terrible. But this is about one person who's a violent predator who is now free.
And it's about one judge who essentially let him out of prison, out of jail in 3 months.
But can I just because this is true, we're being too clever by half. The idea that when you prohibit something, it increases its use is demonstrably untrue. There's a lot of social science in this. Drinking went down during Prohibition. We have legalized marijuana in a ton of states. In effect, marijuana use has risen dramatically. Now, that's bad or good, depending on what you think. I'm not that upset about it, but it's true. When you prohibit something, people do it less. It's true with smoking. So if you do want to reduce drinking on campus, make grumpy noises about it, and people actually drink less.
On a college campus, you're going to drink when you're in college.
Absolutely.
You're going to be doing it in the bathroom stall. You're going to be taking enough shots to make sure that you're drunk enough by the time you get there, rather than just being able to drink in a normal way, the way that you will or hopefully will throughout your life.
When do 18-year-olds drink normally? I've never met one who did.
Because it's been illegal for them for basically our entire adulthood. That's why.
So if we legalize heroin, would more people do it or less?
No, but it gets back
I can't speak to heroin. I have no experience with heroin. I do with college
drinking.
The
reason that I'm not doing heroin is not because it's illegal. It's because I don't want to die.
But it gets back to sexual assault and rape, and if you don't address that and make people take personal responsibility and send them to prison until they've got gray hair, then not a damn thing is going to change.
Melissa, I'm sorry, but Melissa raises an excellent point, which is that all of us have drank in our lives, and all of us have gotten drunk in our lives, and it has never led me to want to commit illegal acts.
Violent crime.
Right? Violent crime. And if you have it in you to commit a violent crime like a rape, alcohol is not the excuse for it. That's the part that I don't understand in this judge.
New evidence of political bias at Facebook, how liberals stacked the deck in its trending news section and kept conservative viewpoints under wraps, and what the social media giant is doing about it.
There's new evidence to back up recent accusations that Facebook was censoring conservative viewpoints in its trending news section. Turns out that a section was run by a staff full of liberal employees. The social media giant has since fired the 15 to 18 employees who worked on trending news and is instead using an algorithm to remove any chance of bias. Our one lucky guy, Tucker Carlson, was actually at the meeting with Facebook executives and conservative media figures after the first allegations of bias surfaced. An investigation found that the team curating trending news showed little diversity in their points of view. Here are some of their social media postings. One managing editor tweeting, "Violence and murder designed to incite fear and affect political change will never be called terrorism if you're white." And another worker with this, "Trump wants Mexico to build a wall to keep illegal immigrants out, but can I just build a wall to keep Trump completely out of my life?" Tucker?
No, you can't. That's not possible.
You went there. What was that like, going to the headquarters? It
was just like being at every news organization I've ever worked at before I came here. I mean, it's a group of people with views that are so similar and backgrounds so similar, regardless of their race or their age. They all come from the same world. They've never met anyone who disagrees with them, so it's very easy to imagine anyone who does is either stupid or immoral and to dismiss their points of view. There is, in other words, literally no diversity of thought and none allowed. And that's the core problem. It's the core problem of the New York Times, the Washington Post, at Politico, and every one of these outlets, even the ones who try hard to be objective, can't be.
Right. So now they're using this algorithm, Dagen, I don't know, the algorithm not working out so well. There's stories that no one are reading that are trending or completely false stories. So, I mean, what should they do?
Here's why I don't get my undergarments in a twist about all this, because the trending news topics, that's not really how people use Facebook. They communicate with their friends. You look at all my friends, guess what? Not a lot of liberals. And so you're getting information passed on by...
We all love you, Julie.
No, but you're getting information passed on by your friends. They are sharing articles from Fox News. It is ultimately up to your own community on Facebook. No,
that's not true, because you don't know which of the articles they share show up in your feed. That decision is made by Facebook.
No, not if I tag somebody and say, hey, read this, and I share a Fox News article on my feed, it shows up on my wall.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
but it's not necessarily visible to everybody who's friends with you. But that decision's made by Facebook.
I think people do get maybe more from Twitter, but I think some people do use the trending section a little bit. Is there a way to do that without an algorithm? Hire different people are always going to be biased. I mean, what should they do?
Right. I mean, it's hard. I mean, if you look by virtue of where Facebook is and who lives in the community and who they hire, I mean, they would have to really go out of their way to find somebody diverse to come in there. Having an algorithm, I think, is the easiest way, and there has to be a way. I mean, you have, PhDs from MIT who can go in there and figure out how to not have junk news stories or fake news stories come into the feed. But like Tucker says, I mean, it kind of speaks to this quality that a lot of people have, where you surround yourself with people who have like-minded opinions and you get insulated in your own, way of thought. It's kind of an analogy for most people out there.
Can we just remember for a second, for all of us who believe in private enterprise, this is a private company. They can really do whatever they want, whether you like it or not. And so for Congress to suddenly want to launch an investigation into this,
I think that's a great
Congress
point.
regulates every private company in America.
Gotta go, guys.
No, I mean, it's up to the private company.
Gotta go, guys. Okay.
Seek out what you want to read.
Oh my God.
All right, millions along the East Coast are bracing for a tropical storm Hermine after it barreled ashore this morning, killing at least one person and leaving a path of widespread destruction. Plus, stunning new revelations about how the feds are spending your tax dollars. A new audit confirms the Pentagon reimbursed workers for trips to strip clubs and casinos, more than $1 million worth. How did this happen? And is anything being done about it?
All right, more evidence of your tax dollars at work. An inspector general's report essentially confirming the results of a previous audit last year, an audit that found that Pentagon employees racked up a massive tab at, brace yourself, strip clubs and casinos using their government-issued credit cards. All a plan to make love, not war. According to the report, out of a sample of 30 government cardholders, a total of 22 employees were reimbursed for those charges. What's worse, the report also showed that DoD management failed to take appropriate action to eliminate further misuse. Here's the awesome breakdown. The government shelled out more than $950,000 for casino fun, more than $96,000 for sexy time at strip clubs, the whole Magilla. more than $1 million, money that could be spent defending this
Tucker, you're
country.
being kind of a hater. I think that they went to win money and give it to the troops.
Give it to the troops.
I think it was a fundraising effort for the troops. Well, they were paying a lot because they were tipping well for the troops. No, this is ridiculous, right? Like, they always can talk about, you know, budget problems. The Defense Department needs more money. Then how about don't blow the money you do have on strippers, maybe?
Well, how about that? And how about hold people accountable for things like this? You're more likely to die as a federal employee than be fired, as you know, Julie. Right. This is your government.
It's all mine.
It's all, but it's mine too. I'll concede. So it's really the acid test is who's punished for this, and you know as well as I, nobody will be.
Do you know what I am constantly shocked by when you have these kinds of stories, and sadly they happen all the time? When do you as a government employee wake up and say, I'm going to go to a strip club and wait a second, I'm going to use my company credit card because I don't want my wife to bust me, but it's okay if the Pentagon busts me?
Because
why? Like, how does your brain work?
Can I answer that question?
They don't think you can,
because they get away with it.
Right.
I mean, because wait, so they warned this one guy. They said to him, "You're going to lose your security clearance if you do this again. You're going to lose your." So he immediately goes out and he withdraws from an ATM at a casino 7 more times after he was told he was going to lose a security clearance for $2,270.
Making a lot of money
and
for the
still
troops.
nothing happened.
Because there are consequences at home. Your wife's going to punch you in the neck at best.
Yeah.
But at work, if you work for the government, nothing happens. And I think that this gets worse and worse as the debt goes up. The more money we spend, $20 trillion, what's $1 million?
That's exactly right.
I needed to clear up something, though. You don't find love or sex at a strip club.
No, you don't. Trust me. I've been a bachelor party.
Okay.
But actually, you, I think, answered the question right there. So this guy's caught basically stealing taxpayer money in a casino, and the threat is we're going to take away your security clearance.
And so he does it 7 more times. And this, my friends,
we're going to prosecute you.
Yeah. Let me take it to one larger point. So this is why Donald Trump has any support. Because people are like, there is no logic. There is no sense to this. This is government out of control. This is people in charge who have no idea what's going on. And every time he stands up and he says, our government is broken, it's a mess, we need to inject some regular everyday logic into it, that's his selling point that people get when they read stories like this.
And Hillary's selling point is, this is my base, these are my people, federal employees, and I will protect you no matter what.
No, come on.
It is true.
Who's defending this? What is Hillary defending?
I don't know.
I'm not defending
the Obama administration is defending it by not prosecuting.
This didn't happen in previous administrations.
Doubtless it did. But we're in this administration.
I got it. But
every federal employee votes Democrat, so let's be honest.
I don't know about that.
Well,
really?
Yeah, trust me. That's why D.C. is the most democratic city in America.
No, that's not why.
That's why Virginia went to President Obama and why it's going to go to ICC.
Okay, Tucker, get us out of here.
There's more Outnumbered in just 1 minute. If you turn that dial, you're crazy.
Thank you to Tucker Carlson. We loved having you here. So much fun.
Thank you. Thank you, Dagen.
All right. Have a wonderful holiday weekend. We are back on TV on Monday at noon Eastern. It's a holiday, but we're here, so tune in. Happening Now starts right now.
And we